Hi. The film I will be talking about today is The Rain People. This film was written and directed by Francis Ford Coppola and was released in 1969. This film stars Shirley Knight, James Caan, and Robert Duvall. This film was made at a time in Hollywood where filmmakers were becoming experimental. They were no longer a slave to the formulaic narratives of good versus evil and, a typical rom-com and things of that nature. They were finally letting characters who normally would have never gotten their time on the screen have their stories be told. It was no longer about, big Hollywood epics and filmmakers like John Ford and Hitchcock and Billy Wilder. They were starting to tell the stories of those in society that have been neglected or that would have been seen as mundane in the past. And that was what was so great about Hollywood at this time. You finally had people that were willing to take chances and tell stories where there's no real hero. It's just a day in the life and what these people are going through. And this film centers on Natalie, who's played beautifully by Shirley Knight. And on the surface, she seems to have anything that anybody would want. She's got a loving husband, they have a nice home, they don't seem to have any financial problems, and yet she's miserable. And not only is she miserable, she feels guilty for being miserable because she lives in a world where everybody would look at her and say, you've achieved everything that anybody could want. You've got the good husband, you've got the nice home. Any unhappiness is just a reflection of some moral shortcoming that you must have. You're just an ungrateful person. You must be selfish. You must be this. But there can be no problem with the life you're living. There's only a problem with you. And it's weighting her down. In the first scene, we see her in bed with her husband, and he's kind of got his arm stretched out over her, and you just see the misery in her face. You can just tell she just wants out. And she's in that bed, and just the acting that she does with that look in her eyes is so remarkable because we immediately understand that this is somebody who's working through something. And she's able to do that with no dialogue. We then hear her narrate as she's writing the letter to her husband, explaining that she's got to get out. She's got to clear her head. She'll reach out to him later. She hopes he understands, but she's just kind of got to get some air. And we see her as she's beginning to embark on this voyage, talk with her parents. And everything she voices to her mother falls completely on deaf ears. The guilt that society tells her she should feel, her mother validates that. She can't wrap her mind around the fact that she's not happy being a housewife. What's wrong with you? How selfish can you be to even expect to have time to yourself, to want this time to clear your head? Wake up, that's not the real world. You're his wife now, and you're gonna be a mother, and you're gonna be a homemaker, and you're gonna live the life we all have. And really, how dare you second question that? Who do you think you are? This is what we aspire to. This is what we hope for. And are you this self-entitled brat that just thinks she's made for more? And when her father comes into the kitchen, the mother, he asks, where's your husband? And the mother goes, oh, he's out in the car. She doesn't even want the dad to know, because just how shocking would that be? And unfortunately, that's how a lot of it would be then and even now. When those that we go to hoping will get some understanding, they say, listen, if you're having those feelings, just push them down. But don't give voice to them, and don't you dare listen to them. And it's at this point that she realizes the support that she thought she might naively, foolishly get. She's made peace with the fact that that won't happen. And she embarks on her journey to nowhere. And what Coppola does when she pulls off in the station wagon, he does these flashback-like dream sequences to her thinking back to her wedding and how it got to where it is now, and how she went through this charade and went into it happily, and how in her own way she was lying to everybody. because this is not really what she wanted. And you wonder as you watch the film, did she ever really even get to think about what she wanted? Was that something that she even thought would be valid? Or was that something that you just don't think about? Who cares what you want? You just do this. This is the blueprint for life, and that's just what you follow. And we then see one of the better scenes in the film early, when she's in the phone booth having a conversation with her husband, Vinny, who is completely dumbfounded. He's been under the illusion that everything's great. And we see how, in Shirley Knight's performance, that makes her feel that much more alone. Like, I've been miserable this whole time, and nobody saw it. Nobody knew it. I was going through the motions, but nobody knew. And she then explains to him, she says, she's pregnant. Not I'm pregnant, she's pregnant. And he said, who's pregnant? She says, your wife. And that was so well written by Coppola, because it lets us know that Natalie doesn't see herself as that. That's a part that she plays. That's someone separate from her. And the husband's excited, and he's just thinking, well, this is great. This is the next step in our marriage. We're going to become a family. We're going to do these things. And she's wanting anything but that. She thinks this solidifies the prison sentence. It's not just a prison sentence now, it's a sentence. It's a life sentence is what I meant to say, sorry. And there's no turning back at that point. And she even tells him she doesn't know if she's ready to have it. She doesn't know if she wanted to be a mother. She doesn't even know if she wanted to be a wife, much less a mother. Now you're going to bring a child into this. You're going to solidify this empty, broken lifestyle and tie yourself to it forever. And she hangs the phone up, and she does the scene beautifully. When we see the tears rolling down, we feel that she'd give anything to be able to go back in time, to undo these things. And she realizes in this moment that she never made herself a priority in her own life. Her whole life had been about finding the man, finding something to be in service to, finding an identity, but never really about finding herself. And she then, on her journey, comes across a hitchhiker just standing on the road. And the hitchhiker's played by James Caan, Jimmy Kilgallen. And she stops to pull over. He starts moving toward, and she goes, and then when she sees him stop, she second guesses herself is going to leave, and then she kind of sees the look on his face like, oh, you're going to just go off and leave me. And she decides to relent and stop and let him come in. And he explains to her that he's Jimmy Kilgallen, but he goes by Killer because he's this great football player. He was a college athlete and things of that nature. And this is a performance by James Caan that's unlike, honestly, anything he has ever done. James Caan's probably best known for the other film he did with Coppola, The Godfather. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have seen that one, where he plays Sonny, the tough guy, the guy with the hair-trigger temper, the incorrigible womanizer. This part could not be farther apart from that. And to think that somebody like James Caan, who really was good at playing tough guys, because James Caan, I was shocked to find, is only 5'7", but he plays big. He carries himself as if he's 6'2", 6'3", and you buy it. It's that chest stuck out, that ego, that charisma, that he just exudes all of those qualities. And yet in this film, he found a way to push those qualities down. It's not what was called for. And he gives such a vulnerable it almost reminds me of the performance of Lon Chaney Jr. in Of Mice of Men. It's almost that childlike and that naive. And we find out the reason for it is because he had a head injury in football. He's not the same. And he had been raking leaves at this college, and then his mother passed away, and the university basically just said, here's $1,000, good luck to you. But they basically washed their hands of him and said, see what you can do. And it's at this point that Natalie realizes she's gotten more than what she bargained for. She thought she might just be giving somebody a lift, and now she's burdened with this guy that can't look out for himself. and she can't even look out for herself. That's why she was getting away, just to get away from it all. And now look what's happened. She's got this passenger, and she's got to be able to, she feels obligated to help him. And that's not what this journey was about. This journey was about cutting ties. And here she is with him. And he explains to her that there's this family that will take care of him, and that said that they would offer him work back when he was a football player. It was an ex-girlfriend, and he knows where to find them. And so she takes him there and finds out real quickly they want nothing to do with him. His ex-girlfriend speaks about him in such derogatory tones in front of him, and then will say things like, well, he doesn't care. He doesn't even know what I'm saying. And Natalie can only take so much of that and says, listen, let's leave. You don't want to stay here with these people. Not if they're going to talk to you like that. Nobody deserves to be talked to in this manner. And she does her best to try to find him work. And she tries to drop him off at places, does everything to get away from him. And yet her conscience won't let her do it. She feels almost as though she's throwing him to the wolves. And Natalie, while she's a complicated character, she seems to have a morality about her that those around her seem to lack. And that's the redeemable, well, one of the many redeemable parts of her character is that she is a very moral person. She's just a very misunderstood person. And she finally finds him a job at this reptile ranch in Nebraska. And she gets him there and immediately realizes that the guy running it is as shady as they come. And Caan's character makes the mistake of letting him know he's got $1,000 on him. And she knows that that's the last person in the world to tell. And she's trying to advocate for him before she leaves and make sure that the guy will be good to him and don't charge him this and don't take that and don't give him your money to put where he says he's going to put it in his safe. And finally, the guy looks at her and says, do you want to take him? And she stops and says, I can't. And then she leaves. And then as she's leaving, she gets pulled over. And she's pulled over by this patrolman played by Robert Duvall, Gordon, who writes her a ticket and then says, why don't we go do lunch? And he is attracted to her, and they go to the diner, and then he says, listen, you'll have to pay the ticket, but it's not a big deal. But she actually has to go back to where the reptile ranch is, because that's where she would have to pay the ticket. And she says, I can't go back there. And it seems like she just can't escape living and carrying other people's burdens. She's done her best with her marriage, then she becomes entangled with Killer. She just can't get away. And he says, listen, I don't know what to say other than I'll get you in and out of there fast, but you got to go back. She ends up going back, and Killer has created a complete mess. He's let the animals free. He's done all these things. The guy's ready to kill him. And she again steps up for him. She can't look the other way and just say, well, that's his problem. And pretty much she said, well, where's his $1,000? And he said, here's $200 and I won't press charges. And she looks at Gordon and said, that seems fair to me. And she settles with that. She knows there's no way to get Killer's money back. We then see her speaking to her husband once again in a phone booth. And Killer's kind of walking around the phone booth, trying to get her attention, doing things like that. And then he pulls the cord. And she goes out there and she's so angry at him, saying, you had no right to do that. And he said, well, you were ignoring me. And she's angry with him, and at the same time, she can only be so angry because he's childlike. He doesn't know any better. And she's become all he has. So the very thing that she was trying to escape, she's found herself in it again. She's constantly responsible for others and doesn't know how to untangle herself. She's too moral of a person to completely be able to cut ties. And then the final scene, she's with Duvall's character, Gordon, And we find out he's got a tragic backstory that his wife and kids were lost in this fire. He lives in this trailer with a daughter that he treats horribly. And finally, Natalie just basically says, you don't care anything about me. You're wanting to reconnect with your wife, and you're seeing me as her. I need to get out of here. And he's not going to let that happen. And he then is going to force himself on her. Killer comes to her rescue. He ends up in that little trailer park where he ends up being killed by the man's daughter who's trying to save her father, Duvall's character. And it ends simply with her holding him and crying, saying, I'll take you home. You can be a part of our family. You can live with us. You'll do this. And that's the ending right there. And it's such a brave ending, because usually in films where people go off out on the road, they find some type of resolution or what they were looking for. And in this film, there is no resolution. We don't know what the next step's going to be for her. And while it's not the most upbeat ending, it's a very realistic ending. And it's such a sad and unflinching story. However, it's one that I highly recommend you check out. A lot of people consider it one of Coppola's best films, and I think it's safe to say he did quite a few. So with that being said, I really hope you find this one. It's one that will live in your memory after you see it. You can watch it over and over, and each time you'll come away with something new. So I hope you give it a shot. I hope 2026 is a great year for all of us, and until next time, thank you.